Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to dig into one of the boldest claims you've probably seen floating around the internet. The idea that the richest 1% of the world owns 99% of all global resources. It sounds dramatic, almost unbelievable. And here's the truth. It is an exaggeration. But it comes from a very real place. The reality might not be exactly 99%, but what's actually happening is still shocking enough to stop you in your tracks. Let's slow down and unpack this step by step. According to the latest data, the wealthiest 1% of people on this planet own about 47.5% of all global wealth. Think about that number for a second. Just 1% of the population, tens of millions of people out of billions own. Almost half of everything in existence. And when we talk about wealth, we're not just talking about cash in the bank. Wealth includes property, businesses, stocks, bonds, investments, even valuable assets, minus debts. In other words, everything that can be counted as economic power. Now, if we take this a step further and look at the top 10% of the world's population, the numbers become even more staggering. The richest 10% together hold somewhere between 76 and 85% of all wealth worldwide. That means almost the entire pie of global wealth is divided up between a small slice of humanity, while billions of people are left with almost nothing. So, what about everyone else? What about the bottom 50%, the half of the world's population that makes up over 4 billion people? Their share is only 2%. That's right. Half of humanity is left splitting just 2% of global wealth. Imagine a room with 100 people and 100 slices of pizza. One person grabs 47 slices and keeps them. 9 others take another 35 to 40 slices. That leaves 50 people in the room half. The group sharing just 2 tiny slices. And the rest? They're scraping over the crumbs that fall onto the floor. The remaining 40% of people, the so-called middle, do better than the poorest half. But their share is still nowhere near what the top fractions hold. Their slice is modest, and compared to the wealth at the top, it barely moves the scale. Now, these are global numbers, but when we zoom into certain countries, the inequality is even sharper. Take the United States, for example. There, the richest 1% hold an even larger share compared to the rest of the population. The trend is the same in many developed economies, where wealth accumulates heavily at the very top, and redistributive systems don't do enough to balance things out. This brings us to the question, why isn't it 99%? If the richest 1% control 47.5% of wealth, doesn't that mean the rest of USTA? Other 99% still have more than half. Technically, yes. The other 99% collectively hold 52.5% of global wealth. But here's the catch. It's not evenly spread. Within that 99%, there are relatively wealthy people, business owners, professionals, people in higher income countries, who hold a big part of that slice. Meanwhile, billions of others, especially in developing nations, are left with next to nothing. This is why the 99% slogan feels true emotionally. Even if it isn't mathematically correct. Because for billions of people, the system feels rigged. They see the vast wealth and power concentrated in the hands of a few, and their own lives don't reflect anything close to a fair share. And let's be clear about what we mean by wealth. These statistics are about economic wealth, money, property, financial assets minus debts. They're not literally about resources like land, water, or oil. But, of course, those physical resources are often controlled by the wealthy too, because wealth translates into ownership. Rich individuals and corporations invest in land, energy, technology, and industries that manage those resources. So while the measurement is different, the pattern of inequality still holds. Now let's think about the consequences of this imbalance. Wealth isn't just about money, it's about power, influence, and opportunity. When a small percentage of people control nearly half of global wealth, they also control politics, markets, and even culture. They have more influence over the direction of economies, over what gets invested in, and even over the policies that are supposed to regulate them. Meanwhile, for billions of others, daily life is shaped by scarcity, lack of access to education, healthcare, housing, or even basic nutrition. This kind of inequality has ripple effects everywhere. It drives social unrest, It fuels political divisions, and it makes economic growth harder to share. When half of the population barely has anything, they can't spend, they can't invest, they can't contribute to the economy in the same way. That slows down progress for everyone, not just the poor. So what's the bottom line? The claim that the top 1% own 99% of everything isn't literally true, but the actual numbers might be even more disturbing when you think about them. Nearly half of all global wealth concentrated in the hands of 1%, 3/4 to more than 4/5 of everything controlled by just 10%, and billions of people left with crumbs. This is the world we live in right now, and whether you see it as unfair, unsustainable, or just shocking, it's important to understand the reality behind the numbers, because inequality on this scale doesn't just shape economics, shapes politics, opportunities, and the very future of our societies. So, the next time someone throws around the idea that the 1% own 99% of everything, you'll know the real story. It's not 99, but it is almost half, and that half is more than enough to tilt the balance of power across the entire planet. What do you think? Is this just the way the system works, or is it something that needs fixing? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the realities that shape our world today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.